Good evening and welcome to Inside Government for the fall 2016 semester here at Kew Community College. This is a show that is broadcast on Time Warner Communications, Verizon Fios, the Auburn Regional Media Access, ARMA, and WIN, WIN 89.1, the college's radio station. I'm your host, Guy Cosentino. Over the last several weeks, one of the reoccurring news items in newspapers around the region has been a feeling that there's an emergency with blue algae blooms in Owasco Lake and other water bodies throughout the General Finger Lakes area this summer. At first, the concerns over this were mainly about who might come into contact with it while they were swimming or boating. In recent weeks, the concerns have jumped from the worries for swimmers to those who drink water, and that the tests that have come back positive on occasion for both the drinking water for the city of Auburn and the town of Owasco, which both sell water to other neighboring towns and villages. In the case of the city of Auburn, while this is all ongoing, their water processing plant has been going through a series of upgrades. To talk about the lake and the city's filtration system, we have invited on the new Director of Municipal Utilities for the city, Seth Jensen, as well as two members of the OWLA board, the Owasco Watershed Lake Association, OWLA. We have with us Bob Brower, the current president, and James Beckwith, who is their previous president. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully we gave a little bit of background. We'll get into more depth here. Before getting into blue algae and the real reason you're all here to talk, is what is the state of Owasco Lake, at least from OWL's perspective, right now?
Well, the HAB season, HAB being harmful algae blooms, the issue you were referencing, has basically slowing down, if not ending, because the cold will stop it. And a little bit of warm weather as we're having now could continue it, but we're headed for cold weather, and that will stop the current crisis.
So separate from the blooms,
Right.
in the past, OWL has put on these these lake days
Yes.
up at the pavilion and
Yes.
elsewhere, where you've had Professor Halfman from the Finger Lakes Institute come in, and he has, in essence, talked about Owasco, but he's rated all of the Finger Lakes, and for many occasions, Owasco did not rate well.
Right.
Does it still rate poorly in comparison to its other sister Finger Lakes?
It's about in the middle, a couple of ways. One, in terms of ranking, I'd say it depends on how many you use, but if you had 5, you'd probably put it about in the middle. And unusual coincidence, if you age the lake, the basic way of looking at its condition is lake aging. The technical term for that is eutrophication. So a young lake is oligotrophic, a middle-aged lake is mesotrophic, and a lake near the end of its life, in geologic terms, is eutrophic. And Owasco is in the middle. It's mesotrophic, for the most part.
So Professor Halfman used to talk about, one of the phrases he always used was turbidity. First of all, what is turbidity for those who don't know what that is?
It's just suspended sediment in the water.
It's cloudiness.
It's cloudiness.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where is Owasco Lake progressively, has it gotten less turbid?
Yeah, it has, but that's because of the presence of invasive species.
So the good news is it's less turbid. The bad news is you got stuff that's causing that. It's not good.
They're bivalves. The
Yes.
zebra mussels and the Asian clams tend to clean the water in terms of water clarity.
And that has allowed, that by having the zebra mussels clean the water, that has allowed plant growth to just explode.
It helps.
Certainly has helped a lot.
Yeah,
There are a lot of other factors, whether it be phosphates or whether other nutrients coming in. The other thing is that as far as the lake clarity is concerned and what the zebra mussels and the Asian clams are all doing, the other thing is that when they die off, they release what, the Asian, not the Asian clam, but the zebra mussels release all the things that they've been filtering.
So I am not Bill Nye the Science Guy, so we're going to have to talk a little bit on a different level. When you say phosphates, what are you talking about?
It's basic nutrient.
Nutrients.
Yeah. So there's.
So is this
from-
runoff from farms? Is this runoff just general runoff, or is this stuff that's the direct result of farming, whether it's animals or?
It's all the above.
Okay.
It's all the above. Certainly, in 2008, a study was commissioned to determine in estimates for the sources of nutrients in the watershed. Because if you're trying to decelerate or control the rate that the lake ages, then you want to reduce the nutrient loading going into the lake. If you look at the sources of nutrients going into Owasco, the point sources, the sources coming out of pipes, and in our case it's both Moravia and Groton's treatment plants, have gone to what Seth would call polishing, where they both remove phosphorus before the discharge into the inlet that carries into the lake. So that leaves non-point sources, which are much more diffuse from throughout the
So
watershed.
give us an example of what a non-point would be.
A field in agricultural production. Phosphorus is a constituent in fertilizer, and it's put on the land to begin the growth cycle of whatever's planted. If it stays on the land, that's all it does. If it winds up in the lake, it does the same thing there. It accelerates the rate of growth.
So let's say between 2008 today, is the lake cleaner? Is the lake in better shape today than it was 8 years ago?
No,
Okay.
no, that's a quick
can't,
answer.
You can't look at HABs or blue-green algae and say it's in better shape.
Okay.
But we didn't have a blue-green algae concern 8 years ago.
All right. So let's talk about blue-green algae. For those who don't know what is blue algae?
It's oddly, it's not algae at all.
Okay.
It's a misnomer that the scientists, I guess, had began calling it blue-green algae. It's actually a form of bacteria. It's called cyanobacteria.
So what causes this?
It's correlated with high levels of nutrient levels, high
Okay.
levels of nutrients.
So phosphates and other things of that nature.
But what causes the bloom itself is not known.
Oh, it's not
It
known.
is not known.
So
The triggers, in other words, that set the conditions.
So this wasn't. So this got into the lake through non-point sources.
And point sources.
And point sources.
And- yes, both.
Okay. Is it just a skin irritant, as far as you're all concerned? Is that was how it first came? I thought the first news stories were more about swimmers, worried about them coming into contact. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
So is it a skin irritant? Could
It
it cause
is.
other problems if you're swimming in it?
Depending on the level of exposure, it is a toxic bacteria, and it's always been in the lake. There are records of it having been in the lake 100 years ago. Cyanobacteria is the bacteria that created the atmosphere that allows us to breathe. It created oxygen, so it's been around for a long time.
But it started first appearing in the last 2 years in greater.
It started to bloom with more frequency in the last
Okay.
3 or 4
And
years.
where is it blooming? Where are you finding blooms?
All along the shoreline.
Yeah, all along the shoreline.
And
'cause that's what we were looking for.
now deep water blooms.
Yeah.
So
No,
farther out in the lake, this has appeared in other members of the Finger Lakes as well.
Yes.
This is just
Absolutely.
not. And do you have out there a boat looking for these blooms? How is the city paying attention to this?
Well, one of the avenues we have utilized and we fund every year along with the town of Owasco is the watershed inspection program. They've partnered with the state Department of Environmental Conservation and with all of the local partners and owners along Owasco Lake for a kind of a grassroots approach, I think, when it comes
Yes.
to identifying blue-green algae and utilizing the people who live on the lake as the first source of contact or calling, and then in turn the watershed inspection program along with the state Department of Environmental Conservation map and test the algae blooms throughout the course of the summer.
So are we getting more calls that there is blue-green algae there because people are now taking notice of it? If it had been there 100 years ago, it's similar to, and this is a bad analogy, so I apologize, but cases of child abuse reporting went up in the 1980s because people, it was in the news, people started reporting it. Are you getting, and I'm not correlating, but once something hits in the news, do you get more calls, oh, guess what's out my door?
There's more public awareness about it, that's for sure. So
it's not necessarily there's more there, it's more that you're getting, you're seeing more?
There is more.
There is more,
There is
okay.
definitely, there's
And
more.
it's being reported.
And it's being reported, so it's a double.
Can you kill it?
the
Can you
blue-green
kill, yeah.
algae,
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, chlorine will kill it.
I'm not talking about a Steve McQueen, the Blob movie, but
Well,
Yeah.
the interesting thing about the blue-green algae itself is non-toxic. It's when it dies, it releases
Oh,
the toxin
okay.
that we're all nervous about as
so is the
residents.
idea not to kill it? Is to
in the
fought-
treatment process, it is not to initially kill it until you can filter it out of
I mean, you,
the filters.
you
out
tell
of the
them, I
water.
mean, you filter it out, the blue-green algae,
Yep.
and then before you put it through the
slow thing.
chlorine.
Oh,
Chlorine.
So we should say this, maybe we should take a step back of how the city, so there are two municipalities that mainly draw, forget lake owners who might draw water out, and we should ask about that.
Yeah.
It's the city of Auburn, and you service how many towns and villages?
We service over 45,000 local
And
area-wide
people. So that's
people,
outside
yeah.
the city of Auburn and some of the towns and villages.
Absolutely.
And then the town of Owasco also draws water
Yes, and they,
They
serve
process-
the town of Fleming.
for the two of those. So,
Yep.
and so there have been different tests for, and they've shown different levels of blue-green algae. Does that mean because they're drawing from different, you both don't draw out of the main pipe at the seawall? I know that's the city's.
That's the city's intake pipe.
Okay.
correct.
Where does Owasco draw from?
Owasco's is a little bit further down the lake. I want to say directly out from the yacht club.
Yes,
Yeah,
just
southeast.
yes,
Yeah,
just
southeast
to
of
the
yours.
south of the yacht club.
Okay.
And our intake pipe is approximately 1,800, 2,000 feet out from the pier
Okay.
into the lake.
So basic question to you, is those cities' drinking water safe?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yep.
So a lot of people are on the internet now,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things they notice is that if you have blue-green algae and it's showing up in tests, that you shouldn't be giving it to children who are 5 and below. Go to bottled water. Is that
Right.
something you recommend?
Well, I look to the health department
Okay.
for their recommendations, and they in turn look to the US EPA and their guidance. They're kind of the specialists when it comes to understanding and issuing guidance associated with any type of
But if you're a New
environmental
York State,
concern.
but if you're a New York State resident, between the EPA and the New York State Department of
Health, thus
and
far, their recommendations are that it's safe to drink the water.
Okay.
I haven't stopped.
But they've
drinking
also
the water.
been criticized for everything that occurred up in Hoosick Falls as well, is not having their act together.
Well, and a lot of that's transparency related, and we in this case have been more than transparent, in my opinion, with what the health department locally here has done as far as testing and publicly.
And how often do you test?
Every day.
And so,
We've tested every day since the levels have increased.
when was the last time you identified blue-green algae?
It has been identified in our raw water, our intake pipe, as much as or as recent as yesterday.
Okay. So we're taping
But our treatment process
Monday the 17th.
has been handling
Okay.
all of the toxin and has been below the detectable limit in the lab.
And you
So-
said with winter and fall coming along that
They'll
blue-
stop.
When the-
yeah, we've noticed
water
a
temperature.
gradual decline.
Okay.
Yeah.
But doesn't that mean the blooms die, which wouldn't that mean their toxins would go up?
If they're toxic, but they're
If-
not always toxic.
Oh,
either.
okay.
So that's the in-lake testing, which is different than what Seth is talking about, is going to detect different levels, so that may be what you're seeing, different reports of different amounts.
So in-lake testing is occurring how often?
Well, there's two main aspects of the in-lake testing going on. There are 3 buoys in the lake, a deep water buoy and 2 shallow buoys, and that's the advantage of having the buoy, is that you're getting 24/7 data in some cases, and it's weather data, it's dissolved oxygen levels, it's actually a form of chlorophyll that is unique to the cyanobacteria. So in essence, though it's not as calibrated or anywhere near as accurate as the test that Seth is talking about, it's still testing for the presence of a chlorophyll, which indicates it's an indication that the cyanobacteria is there. It's not an indication that it's toxic. You can't do that any other way but through either strip test that it's like a litmus paper you dip in the water, or in the need for more accurate tests, they're sent either to the Wadsworth lab run by the State Health Department, or the lab at Environmental Science and Forestry under the direction of Dr. Greg Boyer. And they both have techniques.
And that's at SU.
Yeah, it's in Environmental Science and Forestry. Yeah.
So just if people, most people, you don't want them walking around there, but the city has a filtration plant that is located where?
On Swift Street, right at the corner of Swift Street and Pulsifer.
And Pulsifer, right? And it's called a slow sand filter.
And we have a rapid sand filter.
Okay, so what?
It's our Auburn filtration plant.
Okay,
Yeah.
so tell us what the two are and why they're different,
Well,
or how they work.
The original plant was constructed, I think, 100 years ago this year, and that was our slow sand filter plant. There's 4 basic pods to this filtration system.
All underground.
It's all underground.
It's like a big cavern.
Absolutely. And
It's the coolest place in the city.
Oh, it's amazing.
it is.
Especially if in the summer,
No
it's
pun
the really
intended
coolest
there,
place.
yeah. So it receives and can treat up to 7.5 million gallons per day, and the sand filter system is actually what is doing the work and cleaning.
So the water,
water.
flows through there. And how many gallons of water does the city go through usually?
4 to 5 million gallons per
so
day.
water goes through there, filters through the sand.
Yep.
Sand stays there for how long?
Depending on the volume that goes through the plant, that can vary, but it is cleaned about once a year.
And you shut down each one of those quadrants, pull the. It's
Yeah,
very
we have
labor intensive.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's the one system. What's the other system?
The other half is a newer facility that was constructed in the late 60s. That's our rapid sand filtration plant. And much like the slow sand filters, it's a similar concept. It's just much easier to clean. We use large pumps to backwash that system every few days, and that has the same capacity as our slow sand filter plant, and about 1/10 the space.
So for the slow sand filters, I thought I heard it because I was at City Hall maybe 3 weeks ago, is there a worry that the toxins, and I may not be using the right term, but the toxins from the blue algae gets into the sand and it creates a problem in the filters?
There's not really a lot of information about it
Okay.
right now, so I wouldn't feel comfortable commenting about it. The one thing.
But it was a question that was raised.
Yeah, it was, and I know some studies that have been done as far as treatment goes in other countries don't actually think that the sand filter system does much with respect to filtering out the toxins. There's other protocols that we use at our plant.
Could the city ever go to the other system completely?
No, you would have to marry the
For
two
capacity.
systems. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So other communities around here, what does OWSCO use?
Owasco is more of a batch plant. They have small compact like a filter system similar to our rapid sand filters.
And I know it's in another county, but it's serviced by this time Warner and Verizon. What is Skinny Atlas uses a system that goes into Syracuse.
Zero.
It's not filtered.
That's not filtered.
And have they been having algae blooms there?
To my knowledge.
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. I doubt they're looking, but there are a lot of
You
careful.
doubt they're there?
Yeah, the nature of the lake is not that they're not careful people and on top of what is going on.
Well, they're very
here.
strict there. Some would
you
say that
bet.
they're much stricter than the Owasco watershed.
There are key differences in the way that
Yes.
the two lakes are regulated. There are key differences in the shape of the watershed too. For one thing, it's 1/4 the size of the Owasco Lake watershed.
So those who don't know the size, so the Owasco, explain, I most likely did 5 shows on this 5 years ago, but tell us right now, what is a watershed and how is it, what is the Owasco watershed and about how many square miles is
By
it?
definition, it's the land area that drains into the lake. And in a system like that, the lake is the penultimate sink of everything that's going on in the watershed, because the water
And
travels.
we have how many inspectors for Owasco?
It varies because they hire seasonal inspectors as well, but I think probably from 3 to 5, depending on the time of the year.
And and Skinny Atlas's watershed is how much smaller?
It's about 50 square miles versus Owasco's 208.
And do you have any idea how many inspectors they have?
I do not. I
I
would.
think I heard it was 5.
Five.
It just, yeah.
So from proportionality, it's a little
Yes.
different.
Yes.
Can I just
Yeah,
go-
we'd have 20 if you looked at it as
Well,
a ratio to
I'm-
the size of the watershed.
Well, and
right?
that's frankly, are the inspectors paid for by the city and Owasco users? Is that
Yes.
Okay.
The water fund goes to pay.
for the, okay. A couple quick, I know right now, one of the reasons is that you were at City Council 2 weeks ago, that one of the reasons we asked you to come on here is you're in the middle of some upgrades at your system.
Yep.
What upgrades are you making at the filtration plant?
Most of them are pump related, so a substantial amount of funding, $3.4 million was authorized by City Council
For the overall project?
a year and a half, 2 years ago, to look at and replace or repair our existing pumping or pumps at our lower pump station. So that work is near completion. We're shipping out the last pump to get rebuilt, and currently the pump station is back online functioning normally. All of the pipe within that facility was replaced. We replaced our mixers and motors in our flocculation tank, as well as did some structural repairs.
Flocculation is what?
Flocculation is a chemical that's added to the water to
Not fluoride, though.
Nope,
Okay.
not
I just
fluoride.
want- well, that's why I wanted to
there's-
ask.
there are grants for fluoride
I
out
know.
there, but we're not pursuing them at this point in time. The flocculation tank, basically what that is it's a chemical or it's a material that's put into the water that binds with suspended material and drops out
Okay.
to clear.
And we might do a show on fluoride at some point, but anyway,
boy.
because we've had the dental people on here before. How is this, these upgrades, are they being paid for?
In June, our director of capital projects and grants and myself wrote a grant to the Department of Health, and we were successful in getting 60% paid by the state, and 40% is coming out of the water fund.
So from ratepayers, though, people who...
40% would be ratepayers, 60% is state grant.
And, before coming back to OWL's position and all this, what is your concern about right now about blue-green algae, as far as your operations are concerned?
Our operations, and I'm just concerned, I know that our plant is capable of performing better as it relates to removing the toxins within our treatment system. And we've hired a consultant already to come out and do some testing to better understand a certain treatment process that will and has proven to be effective in removing the cyanobacteria. And my goal over the next year will be to implement some sort of a better management practice within our own facility to fine-tune how we're combating the blue-green algae within the facility, short-term goal.
I also mentioned you're new at this job. When did you take over?
Middle of May of
Lucky
this year.
you. Okay.
It's been a busy first few months.
Let me ask you,
Sink or swim.
literally. So, quick couple of questions because we have about 5 minutes left on just OWL itself, and I'll call it OWL, but I know it's the Wasco Watershed Lake Association.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Go ahead.
But we're now proud to say we're a little over 1,100 people.
So you're a membership organization.
Yes.
Membership
People
organization.
pay dues. How do they do that?
You go online, www.owla.org, logically enough, and download a membership form or show up at a meeting. We meet the first Wednesday of every month. 90% of the time we're at the Springside, but we do special programs at Auburn Public Theater because of the facilities they have, and then recently our collaboration with the Yacht Club resulted in their inviting us to have a meeting there. So our last meeting was out at the Yacht Club.
And how much does it cost to join?
It's $25 for
Yes,
a family member.
For a family member.
And so what
20.
type of, we talked a little bit about, you've got the 2 buoys out, but what type of advocacy do you also do?
Well, we put a team together, and in the 2015 budget, visited with our state reps in Albany, somewhat relentlessly, and as a result, they offered the support we hoped, and we captured those efforts, resulted in a $600,000 grant.
And that money is being used for what?
Well, it's a combination of things. The primary purpose of the fund was to accelerate the efforts going on in the watershed to reduce the nutrient loading we were talking about earlier that kind of sets the stage for all of these problems and is also directly related to H2 cyanobacteria. So in addition to the accelerated watershed work that will go on, that's shovels in the ground, right? So that's grass waterways, buffer strips along the tributaries.
It's not just testing, and that's what.
I haven't even mentioned
Yeah,
testing.
I know, we haven't even mentioned that,
Yeah.
but we're also doing that.
But yeah, we're the reason that there are over 40 people that do a shoreline surveillance task once a week and have been doing it all summer. So there are over, just under 40 people involved in that, in an effort led by Rebecca Gorney, who is the lead research scientist for DEC, who actually designed this study.
So OWLA also puts together a Wasco Lake Day, am I correct?
Yes.
And when is that usually held?
It's it's always been the second week of June.
Yeah.
But this year we're changing it up a little bit, and we're going to be in August maybe.
We are, yeah.
And we're going to be on the Deauville, more on the Deauville side.
And we'd love to have you come back in the spring to talk about, do you want to ask?
Love to. But I also would like to mention that on the first Saturday in March, we do a
That's-
symposium, which is, we call
So
it
we
March to Lake Day.
So then we should have you back in
That
February.
would be the time.
Okay.
Because that's right here at the
Let me,
college.
we talked a little bit about agricultural runoff and all the things. If from OWL's perspective, you're not a policymaker, so I'm not going to ask you this, put you on the spot for this, but
Thank you.
from OWL's perspective, if you could do 1 or 2 things to change the way things operate to impact the lake positively, what would be the 1 or 2 things you'd do?
Number one is stop the nutrients from coming in the lake, I think. However, there's a 3-point. One is we've got to have safe water, drinking water. Then we want to be able to do the stop the phosphates or the nutrients from coming in. And thirdly, the education and testing for making sure that there's continuity and follow.
And there is some type of conflict here between state agricultural rules and what you can do locally. Am I correct on that?
You are correct.
Yeah,
I
yes.
love that smile, Mr. Beckwith.
It's-
I'm thinking we can do a whole 30 minutes on this in February.
We could. However, the ag industry is starting to realize that we all have to work as a partnership on helping the lake.
So
the lake's a living.
for all 3 of you, real quickly, because we have less than a minute,
Yeah.
top concern over the next year for Wasco Lake?
Short-term goal, making sure next year we're ready.
for the algae.
Yep.
It'll be back.
Complete agreement. Number one is get the
Yes.
modifications in the treatment plant to protect the public health and safety. We'd be the first organization to stand up in support of that, and the first ones to start screaming if it stops there, because we also have to get in the watershed and do a lot more work there to stop the conditions that set up these blooms from.
Yes.
Anything you'd add?
And basically stopping the nutrients from coming in the lake. And it's a big effort, and we need not only local, and by the way, a number of very good local people are working very hard on it, but local, state, and federal funds for all this.
We'd love to have you back in February. We'll have to get an update on what your projects are over at municipal utilities. But we want to thank all three of our guests. They have been the city's new director of municipal utilities, Seth Jensen, as well as Owasco Watershed Association's current president, Bob Brower, and former president, Jim Beckwith. They've been here to talk about blue-green algae as well as the state of Owasco Lake, and we will have them again in the spring once we get through the candidates forums in the next couple of weeks. Next Tuesday, we'll be back with two back-to-back Inside Government shows, one with new city manager Jeff Dygert and Mayor Michael D. Quill. The other will be Auburn Superintendent of Schools Jeff Perazzola, who will give us a district update. This Thursday, we start our series of candidate forums. In the studio, we'll have the candidates for the 51st Senate District, which includes parts of southern Cuyahoga County, and is now currently represented by James Seward. And his challenger is Jermaine Bagnell Graham. And they will be here this Thursday. Next Thursday, we'll have the 54th Senate District Forum to replace retiring Senator Michael F. Nizzolio. Democrat Keenan Baldridge has agreed to appear, as well as Floyd Rayburn, who was still on the ballot this November after losing the Republican primary to Pamela Helming. At this point, Ms. Helming, who is the Republican candidate, has declined to participate due to a scheduling issue. We'll close off our forums on Tuesday, November 1st with the 126th Assembly District, which faces off Assemblyman Gary D. Finch and challenger Diane Dwyer. That's a rematch from 2 years ago. Before we go, though, we would like to let you know that you can let us know your ideas for questions or guests for Beyond the Front Page or Inside Government. We don't do the questions. That's Jeremy Boyer, the Citizen. You can send them to us at cozguytho@aol.com or Inside Government, 141 Dunning Avenue, Auburn, New York, 13021. I'm Guy Cosentino for Cuyahoga Community College. We want to thank you for watching. We hope you have a great night and have a terrific tomorrow.